Thank you. It's a real privilege to be here in front of leaders of Army organizations and their senior staff to talk about innovation science. And first I'm going to motivate you by explaining why you should care about innovation and what it means to the Army in the current environment, where at this propitious moment we have the opportunity to innovate our way into the future, to 2025 and beyond. It would be simpler to talk about this topic than the technical aspects of baseball. Although I'm fully qualified to answer all of those questions that our Table Topics Master presented. And nobody answered any of those questions well. So the temptation is there to do that. But instead, I'm going to give you a foundation for fundamental change, because that's what we're about in the Army right now. As we close out two major wars, we've already made the investments that are going to take us through 2020, and right now we're making decisions in science, technology, but more importantly, how we organize and how we conceptualize the future so that we will have a trained and ready force that meets the Chief of Staff of the Army's vision. So I'm going to take you through that strategic vision. I'm going to give you some definitions of innovation and related terms that you can use as you go forward. I'm going to delve into that human element of creativity and talk about some mental models that you can use as you understand innovation in your organizations and as the Army tries to foster innovation across the entire Army to get to the future. And then I'm going to talk about roles of engineers and analysts and others, those technical people who you're going to use to help you get there. And then I'm going to give you some advice about how you can lead strategic innovation or allow strategic innovation to occur in your organizations. One caveat, there has to be Latin in anything that talks about science. So caveat emptor. If we look back here, Machiavelli warns you that should you decide to innovate, that you are treading on dangerous turf. So this is the Chief of Staff of the Army's vision and priorities. And you'll notice the human element is most prominent in this vision. It's not about science, technology, and other aspects of the future. It's not about acquiring material systems. It's about preparing the Army soldiers, and leaders for an uncertain future. And it's our job to make his vision a reality. Major General Hicks briefed the Chief of Staff of the Army on our options to continue to try to adapt ourselves into the future or to take a bold path of fundamental change and follow the bottom axis and innovate our way into the future. It's the riskier course of action, but General Hicks successfully argued that we cannot, with the degree of uncertainty we have about the future and the rapid pace of change, allow ourselves to continue to try to react and adapt to the future. Instead, we have to take the bolder path of innovation because we're unlikely to remain the best Army in the world and to have that decisive overmatch that we expect to have against every adversary in the full range of military operations. As a result, the Chief of Staff of the Army has created a construct that we call Force 2025. And this is his construct for taking the Army into the future over the next decade. And TRADOC is executing and leading Force 2025 maneuvers, which is a campaign of learning in both the physical and intellectual environment in order to define the concepts that we will begin to use as we move forward. You can see the goals there for Force 2025. This is all about fundamental change. And with fundamental change, all of you and all of your men and women are going to be facing an uncertain future. And they're going to be facing a future where there's potential loss. Change often creates fear in organizations because of that potential loss. You're going to have to cope with that and adapt to it. I'm going to try to lay a foundation for some of the innovation science to help you. So first, let's look at an academic definition of innovation. This uses one of the standard references from Princeton, Fred, that lexicographers use to look at words. And when we look at this academic lexicographic definition of innovation, we find, especially in sentence 1 and 2, that it's about creation, and it's creation through scientific processes and through intellectual processes to take us into a fundamentally different process or set of devices and activities that we're using. But I'll give you an operational definition to help you. Innovation is people putting ideas into valuable action in new ways. It's substantial, not incremental, but it's not necessarily earth-shattering in and of itself. Many small innovations will add up to the innovation that takes our Army into the future. Innovation is fundamentally not about ideas. Ideas are necessary. For innovation, you need opportunity, and you need people who can spot those opportunities and exploit those opportunities as they see them. And the things that drive the ability to do that have to do with their cognitive capacity, which is their education, their experience, their knowledge, their aptitudes, their cognitive style, and you need a diverse range of cognitive styles for people who are going to undertake these activities. And then you have to understand the fundamental problem-solving process that we go through as we create this future together. Divergence, where we generate ideas and alternatives, and convergence, where we bring them together and select the alternative that we want to use going forward. And we have a creative diversity model that psychologists generally agree on. Some will say that not everybody is creative, but most psychologists believe everyone's creative, but they're not creative in the same way. And there are about 4 fundamental variables that include those: cognitive capacity, cognitive style, as well as motive. And you have to motivate your people and your organizations to be willing to undertake change and underwrite change. And you have to provide opportunity within your organizations so that people see those opportunities and believe that they can grasp them and move forward. There's no ideal combination for all situations. The psychologist Guilford identified 2 activities that occur during problem solving: that divergent thinking where we generate alternatives, and that convergent thinking where we select among the alternatives. And psychologists today believe that the difference in how people do that comes down to their cognitive capacity and their cognitive style. That cognitive capacity or level has to do with what you bring to the problem. And that's a given, although obviously the Chief of Staff's priorities center around training, leadership, and education, areas where we're building more human capital. So across the decade, as we innovate, we're going to prioritize building human capital to do that. But fundamentally, when you bring people into your organization to help you, especially analysts, engineers, and others, you should expect them to come with a higher cognitive level. You should expect them to see more possibilities, and you should ask your people to see more possibilities as they're generating alternatives and ideas, and use more advanced thinking as they examine those alternatives and generate more, and then to apply, especially from your OR analyst, more advanced principles in convergence. In 1951, Kimball and Morse published this book, Operations Research Methods. Out of World War II, we gained a science of operations research. As scientists from many disciplines applied the scientific method and brought knowledge from across a wide variety of scientific disciplines for military operations. My organization is filled with operations research analysts. Your staffs and organizations use operations research analysts. So moving forward, I'm going to give you some clues for how to use those people to help you take your ideas and your opportunities and make innovations of them. And we said that people vary by their cognitive capacity, their cognitive level, and their cognitive style. So what do you get from OR analysts? You get a more structured style. That means that they're going to be more meticulous as they look at alternatives. They're going to scope and bound how they're going to approach generating those alternatives. And they're going to use current structures as a point of departure for creating those. Contrast that with some of the other people that you're going to bring in to help generate the ideas and alternatives, are going to use a less structured style. They're going to throw out ideas. They're going to find clusters. They're going to be less concerned with the existing structures. And then during convergence, where you really want to employ those analysts to their fullest capacity, you want them to use their logic and their meticulous attention to detail in order to help you synthesize and integrate. Remember, the general population is normally distributed, but things like the Apple computer didn't get invented as an innovation just because Steve Jobs had an idea and had a passion for that. You also had the Wozniaks, who actually designed the circuit board that made the Apple I and Apple II computer. You need to bring together people from all across this cognitive spectrum. Now, I promised you I'd help you with leading innovation in your organization. First thing is, give up on trying to lead it from the top. It's not going to happen. Instead, look at the constraints to innovation and break down those barriers in your organization. So scientifically, we're going to go through the various scientific disciplines and figure out how we can do that. Psychologists tell us that innovation is about having creative ideas. So overcome constraints that relate to inhibiting your people from having and expressing those creative ideas. Part of that's building within them the human capital and the learning, the lifelong learning that will help them to consider new ideas. You also have a social problem from social psychology. In a group, there are many inhibitors for people bringing forth ideas, for ideas being developed. You have to overcome those obstacles that relate to emotion and culture and other aspects of the group work, including the physical way and the other structures that you use to engage people in groups. And we have some resources to help you with that. Management science and the art of management is all about organization. Organization, and your organization, and all of our organizations, actually inhibit innovation. And so we have to take down the organizational barriers. In economics, they look at it as a problem of markets. So you have to help your people find markets and break down the barriers to marketing their ideas and their innovations. And in terms of societal constraints, across the entire Army, we need to avoid the constraints of identity and social control and history in order to move forward. Finally, as scientists and engineers, we view failures in innovation to be failures in the technology. If it doesn't work, it's not an innovation. So you have to make sure that the environment and the goals for the innovation are achievable. Are there any more questions or any discussion about what I've given you? I've told you why the Army is innovating and why you should care about it. I've told you how to think about innovation in terms of its definition and in terms of what its meaning for you as you look at it down at your individuals. And I've told you how in your organization you can break down those barriers to innovation. Thank you.